Hi there, aspiring fiction author. Welcome to Fiction Author Business School. Do you want to write your stories with ease and confidence? Do you find yourself Googling how to write a fiction book or how to write a character arc? Do you want to create a fiction empire, but you can't even finish the story you're currently working on, and you find yourself doubting it will even be good enough? Hi, I'm Liesl. I too have been writing stories since I was just a kid. I wanted to do something about my fiction writing dreams, but got information overload every time I looked for writing help because there's just so much out there on the internet. I wanted confidence that I wouldn't disappoint my readers and a plan to publish regularly. I knew the foundation of any author career, including the marketing aspect, is a stellar and well-written story, but I didn't know how to be sure that my story was solid. I went on a journey to figure out what really makes readers tick and how to incorporate those addictive elements into my story. In this podcast, you'll find specific tactical fiction writing tips, solutions to writing more words more efficiently, and secrets to mastering your author mindset. So put on your fuzzy slippers, grab a notebook and pen and some chocolate, and let's write some fiction. Hello, lovely authors, and welcome back to the podcast. Oh, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm glad to be here. Anyone who's been listening for a while knows that I have been gone for about a month. I haven't done a new episode, and I apologize for disappearing like that, but I have been working on a lot of things, getting a lot of things done, a lot of things put into place that I'm very, very excited about. So today is probably going to be something of a short episode, but I'm also making an announcement. People have been asking me to do a workshop for a long time, and I'm finally kind of pulling it together, but I'm going to talk more about that at the end. So, without further ado, let's dive into the topic. This is a question that I have been asked pretty frequently. Is there such thing as overdoing character development? And to me, this is really an interesting question that people would even ask it. Like, I always sit back and go, okay, what are they dealing with? What are they thinking about in their brains when they're asking this question? And I can only assume it's because it's one of two things. Either they've created some character development that they're having a hard time putting into their story, so they're feeling like it's extra. Or it could be the opposite reason, that they're a little bit at a loss for character development, so they're wondering if maybe, you should only do so much and not anymore, and that's why they can't figure anything else out. I don't know which it is for the people who've asked this question before, but it's really interesting. And my question is both yes and no. So on the one hand, I really, really hesitate to say you can overdo it because you want as much detail and specificity as you can possibly get. If I say, oh yeah, don't overdo it, just do a few surface things, that's inevitably going to lead to a bland character, okay? One that does not jump off the page, one that is not memorable in the reader's mind. And obviously we don't want that. On the other hand, if you are putting in all kinds of things that are not relevant at all to the story, you could see that as overdoing character development. And we'll get into that more in just a minute here. So I'm assuming, by this question, when you say character development, you're talking about details of the character, likes, dislikes, backstory, things like that. And here's the thing, guys. Most authors think that more detail equals better character development. And again, because you want specificity, there's one way to look at that and say that's true. But on the other hand, again, it's never a black and white. Okay, you have to be really specific about what we're talking about here. On the other hand, irrelevant details are only going to bog down your story. Now, what do I mean by that? It kind of goes back, and I've said this before on the podcast, but not for a long time. The old character sheets that they used to hand out like 10, 20 years ago when I was in high school, when I was in college even, it was really kind of a popular thing to do, to get these character sheets. And it would be a list of like 100 things, 100 questions or fill in the blanks about your character. And this is how people would, quote unquote, get to know their characters really well. And the idea is good, but in practice, it really was not effective. And the reason is that all of the details they were putting in those character sheets tended to be either physical or surface details. So, it would ask like, what color is the character's toothbrush? And if the color of the character's toothbrush is relevant to the story, or you're using that detail in a scene, then sure, you can get to know that. But if you're never even going to mention the character's toothbrush in the story and it has absolutely no bearing on the character arc, then that's a really useless detail, and trying to force that into your story is going to bog it down. Okay, so this is, relative is the operative word here. When it comes to the right details, the ones that will amplify your character arc, that will enhance your story and make your character memorable, and most importantly, will make the story more emotional for the reader. Those are the things that I feel like you really can't overdo. But if you're just putting in detail, surface detail, physical details for the sake of detail, then yes, you absolutely can overdo it, because those are the things that just have no bearing on the story, that have no real meaning for the reader, or maybe even for the character, right? And those are going to do a disservice to your story, okay? So let me give you an example of this. Years ago, I read, I believe it's called the Millennium series. It's the one that starts with the girl with the dragon tattoo. Now, the girl with the dragon tattoo became very, very popular, and for good reason. It was a well-written mystery, and I loved reading that mystery. But I loved it so much that I went on to read the other two books in the series, which were just not nearly as good. In fact, the ending was a colossal disappointment. And, if you liked it, I'm not bashing you, but they set up one thing, and about 80 pages before the ending, like they spent the entire, and these are long books, these are really overwritten. That's one thing, that's one critique people had of them, is they could have really used an editor to tighten them up. So these are like 100,000 plus word novels, right? I don't remember exactly how long, but all three of them are pretty long. And they spent 2.9 of the three novels pointing the audience toward one ending, and then about 80 pages before that ending, you could tell the author just changed his mind. And I don't know if he changed his mind genuinely because he didn't want that ending anymore, or if he was just doing it for shock value or what, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that book against the wall. But anyway, in terms of what we're talking about here, in terms of the detail, one critique that I did read, and it didn't really occur to me while I was reading it, but then once I read this review of it, I was like, yeah, they're totally right. Every single time the main character came home, it would go into a lot of detail about what she ate for dinner. It would talk about these, little pies that she would get and put in the microwave, and, how she would prepare it. And each time it was probably only 2 or 3 paragraphs. It wasn't like an entire chapter about her food. But even so, it was the same thing every single time she did it. Like, she ate the same stuff, just like most humans do. We, have things we like, and we eat the same stuff over and over again. But it was so unnecessary. We didn't need that every single time. Maybe the first time to give us an idea of the culture and what she was eating. But then after that, you could have done it in a single sentence. And every single time he would go on for 2 or 3 paragraphs. And she was eating and preparing the exact same thing. And like I said, I didn't notice it so much when I was reading it. I was just kind of like, just kind of bopping along reading it. But that bugged the snot out of some other people, and I saw a lot of irritated people posting about it online, and I kind of laughed and I went, well, they're not wrong. The author did do that, and I can see how that was completely unnecessary. So that's the kind of detail I'm talking about here. And of course, that was the description of what she's eating. It's not quite the same thing as character development, but the same principles apply. If you're talking about irrelevant details that the audience really doesn't need. What food she was eating had nothing to do with what was going on in the story. It certainly had nothing to do with her character development. If it does, and if you can connect it in some way, then by all means, because it's that connection, it's that relevance to the story that's going to create the emotion in the reader, right? But just be aware of that. So the answer to the question is, yes, you can overdo character development if we're talking about irrelevant details. But in terms of what you do need to create the arc, to create the emotion, to create the transformation, I kind of don't think you can overdo that. In fact, I advocate taking it several levels deeper than most other people who teach writing. So the next question you're probably going to ask is, what do you need then, right? What do you need to create character development or a really effective character arc? Well, I came up with 5 things. Number 1, you need the type of arc it is. So I did a whole episode about this some time ago. It's episode 169 if you want to go review it. But you want to decide whether you're creating a linear character arc. Let's see, there's dynamic linear, dynamic shift, or nonlinear, right? And that just gives you an idea of the transformation the character will or won't go through. So you need to decide if they're starting from a place of weakness and going to move to a place of strength. If they're starting from a place of strength and are going to move either to a place of greater strength or just shift in that same amount of strength, or if they're not going to change at all over the course of the story, which is common, especially with action type characters like Jack Reacher or Jack Ryan, right? And then there are other ways to show the transformation and to show the character growth, but it's just not an actual linear arc. So again, go check out episode 169, if you want to learn more about that. But that's the first thing you need to figure out is what type of character arc you're going to be creating. The next thing you have to figure out is want versus need. Now, this is a tricky one. Basically, at the beginning of the story, your character wants one thing, but they need something else. And I have tried to teach this in past years, and I kind of understood it enough that I could kind of convey it and teach it to people, but I didn't understand it on the deepest level that I probably should have. Okay, this is a deeply psychological and spiritual thing, and I'm going to teach it in great detail in my membership that I'm putting together. So if you want more training on this, it is coming, I promise. But the basic gist here is that your character has a limiting belief, and that belief is going to be what drives them throughout the story, and it's what's going to facilitate their transformation in the climactic moment. So at the beginning of the story, they want one thing, but they need another. Usually what they want is either for the limiting belief not to be there, or for someone else to take care of it for them. But what they need to do is realize that this is something they have to do on their own. They need to do it themselves. They need to go the distance, do the work, and it's going to be hard, but that's what they need to do. And the reason it's important that you understand what this is about your character and that you would be able to articulate it is that this is the beginning of their journey. It's the beginning of their arc. It also is going to inform the end of their arc or the transformation in the climactic moment. So it frames your story, specifically the internal character arc. We're not talking about plot events here necessarily, but it's a really powerful framework for the internal character arc. So that's another thing you need to know. All right. The next thing you need to know is the character wound. Now, I've got listed here, number 3 is the character wound, number 4 is the character backstory. They're somewhat synonymous, but not entirely. So let me explain. The character wound is what actually creates the limiting belief in their backstory, okay? So it's like a particular and very specific incident in their past that kind of creates something negative that they believe. So if you've ever heard anyone teach about the lie the character believes, it's kind of in that same wheelhouse, okay? They believe something negative, either about themselves or the world around them, and there's going to be a particular incident in their past that created that belief, all right? So if we're talking about, say, I like to use Lord of the Rings as an example. Frodo's limiting belief is that he's too small to affect the world outside him, to change the course of the future, as they say in the movies, right? So if you were coming up with his character wound, it would be a particular incident in his past that made him believe that, okay? That is what the character wound is, and it leads to his limiting belief, which is holding him back when it comes to what he's trying to accomplish in the story. The backstory then is kind of all of the stuff around that character wound. So again, the character wound is a very particular incident, but the backstory, of course, is everything that stems from that. It is perhaps more than one incident, surrounding the character wound. It is everything that's happened since then. It's everything that has reinforced that negative belief for him or even moved him somewhat away from it. All right, so these are things that you need to be considering when you're specifically crafting the character's internal arc, all right? The final thing that you're going to need, number 5, is how that wound or limiting belief is going to show up in the story. Because assuming that we're not writing stream of consciousness and that the entire story isn't inside the character's head, we need to, kind of brainstorm how that limiting belief that they have is going to show up physically in the story. What are they going to say? What are they going to do? What kind of decisions are they going to make? If they're in a particular type of situation, how will they react? So maybe brainstorm how they will react in a dangerous situation, in a romantic situation, in an emotionally vulnerable situation, things like that. We need to know how it's going to show up in the story. And the reason that that's so important is because if we're going to convey this to the reader, we need to know how we're going to convey it, right? I mean, if we can't communicate it to the reader through the physical words and actions of the character, they're not going to get what the internal arc is. And of course, because we're talking about fiction, we're talking about books, we can be inside the character's head. So we can convey it through their thoughts as well, but it shouldn't be only through their thoughts, right? Our thoughts are what drive our actions. Our thoughts are what drive our words and our beliefs and what we do in the world. So we just need to brainstorm what that's going to look like in our story so that we have it top of mind, and then we can put it into our scenes. And that's going to be a really effective way to communicate what the character is going through internally on the page to the reader. And for the most part, when people don't do this, when they don't plan this in advance, when they don't know what this is going to be, that's when the character becomes bland, okay? And here's the thing. I know that in most of your minds, your characters are not bland. They're fully formed in your mind. You see them, you hear them, you feel them. You know everything about them. So it's not that you're not capable of creating a great character. It's more about the communication of that character. It's more about communicating on the page to the reader who that character is. And you have to do that through character thoughts, through character emotions, through character actions, through character words, okay? So that's why we're going to consider all of these things, and then we're going to intentionally put them into our story so that the character then jumps off the page for the reader. So let's go over those one more time, what you need. Number one, the type of arc, either dynamic linear, dynamic shift, or non-dynamic. Number two, the want versus need. You're going to have to know what their character wound is, what their limiting belief is, and then you have to know how they want that to be solved versus how they actually need to solve it, because that will frame your internal character arc. You're going to need to know what the character wound is, because that's part of the limiting belief. You're going to want the character backstories, which is all the other stuff around the character wound before the story begins. And then you're going to have to figure out how that wound or limiting belief shows up in the story. Brainstorm specific ways, specific examples that you can put in for how that's going to show up. And if you do that, if you can include all of these things in your story, you are going to have a fantastic character arc, and your readers are going to immediately connect with and identify with this character, and they're going to love that character. Notice it doesn't matter if your character is good or evil here, right? These are just any internal character arc. It's really about whether you're going to be able to pull the emotion out, specifically whether you're going to be able to communicate the emotion on the page so that the reader can latch onto it. Okay, so there are some villains that audiences just love. And yeah, they totally can get behind that this is a villain, that they're going to get their comeuppance, that justice needs to be served, but they still love that villain. And they still a lot of times will have a lot of sympathy for that villain. And how the writer manages that in any of those situations is they manage to convey why the villain does what they do, the reasons behind it, the backstory behind it, the emotion behind it, and then the readers can't help but sympathize with that villain. So you can do this with any type of character, sympathetic, unsympathetic, evil, good, side character, main character, it doesn't matter. Okay, if you do this, you will have a character that feels very real and jumps off the page, and the audience will take that character into their hearts, and that's what we're looking for, okay? So I hope this has been helpful today. Now, I talked about the announcement at the beginning. I am doing a workshop on character development. I did a poll a few weeks ago, and, over and above anything else, people wanted to know how to write great characters, how to write great character arcs, how to write a character that jumps off the page. So that is what I'm doing. It's a couple of weeks away still. It's going to be taught the end of July, but the workshop is called How to Write Characters That Jump Off the Page Without Guessing, Being Cliche, or Beating Your Head Against the Wall. And if you've ever tried to figure out a character and keep getting stuck, I know that you know exactly what that title is about. So if that is something that you are interested in, I'm going to put the sign up link for it in the show notes. So just scroll down and you can click the link to go sign up. It is a free workshop. It's going to go over a week. It's 4 days. There'll be a live training on each day, and there will be replays if you can't make it live. But I am going to be teaching this workshop, and it's only going to be free this one time. I am going to warn you. So even if you can't make it live and you want to do the replays, totally do that. But the videos and everything for it are only going to stay up for about a week, and then I'm going to end up packaging it into a mini course. So just fair warning, heads up, you better watch this now if you want to watch it for free, because it's not going to stay free for too long after the course is given. All right, so if that's something you're interested in, if you want to learn more about what I've talked about here today, we are going to go into it in a little bit more detail in the workshop. I'm going to lay out how to create a great character and a great character arc. And it's going to be kind of half challenge, half workshop, and lots of learning and lots of geeking out about fiction and all of that. So I really hope to see you there. And once again, the link to sign up is in the show notes. All right, that is it for today. Everyone have a fabulous week of writing. Go out there and create some characters that just jump right off that page, okay? And I will be back next week. Bye. Thanks so much for listening today. Before you go, would you be willing to do me a solid? If you found any value at all in this episode today, would you be willing to share it with other authors just like you in the hopes that they might find some value in it as well? Happy story crafting this week. Remember, only you can bring the world the unique story that you are trying to tell.
Only you can succeed in your own unique way in getting it out of your mind and your heart and into a medium where it can reach thousands, if not millions, of salivating readers. You don't have to worry about failure because there is always a market for awesome.